Before we begin, check out my new Patreon page with videos too spicy for YouTube. I highly recommend subscribing. I'll post few times a week. Story: Amanda and I met on Instagram. Well, I saw her on Instagram and I was mesmerized. I was scrolling through my feed, and she was tagged in a group photo with my older brother. I asked about her first, broke code and all that. Plus, he was 2 years older than me. So that meant she must have been older too. What drew me in was her smile. From the moment I studied the picture, I noticed she had this cute gap between her two front teeth, and whenever she smiled, it gave me this fuzzy feeling. She resembled Velma from Scooby-Doo in a way. Her hair wasn't as short, but she did have brown bangs. She wore glasses and she was a little on the chubbier side. My brother, let's call him Chase, gave me the green light, along with a rundown of who Amanda was and what she liked. I didn't find it weird at all that he seemed to know so much about her. In fact, I appreciated it because I wasn't a hookup kind of guy, at least not yet, and I was known to be a little awkward. Gaining insight into her would make things easier for me, as I'd know where to start and what topics to avoid. Jason, on the other hand, was different. He was the life of the party everywhere he went, which meant he knew a lot of people and a lot of women. To hide my jealousy, I would call him every woman's dream, because he seemed to be just that. Maybe it was his height or the bad boy look he had going for him. I gave off more of the stereotypical nerd vibes with my square glasses and pressed button up shirts. Don't judge me. I was just coming into their world. The point is, he had tons and tons of experience. And although his remedy for my social anxiety would always be to try his pot, I'd never crossed the line into drugs. Amanda wasn't like the kind of girls I typically see around campus, the type of girls that gravitated towards Chase. And it made me eager to reach out to her, but also extremely nervous. Jace kept encouraging me to go ahead and reach out to her, and I assumed he didn't have her for himself because she wasn't his type. So that's when I finally slid into her DMs. Amanda was immediately friendly. She replied to my messages almost instantly, and we went from having small greetings to talking at least 12 hours a day in less than a week. We finally decided to meet up on campus after 3 weeks because our schedules were pretty messed up. With her being in her third year at 21 and me being in my first at 19, her classes went on for an entire day, whereas I had at most 3 or 4 per day. When things settled down a bit, I was able to successfully get her out on a date. Everything went well, and it turned out that we had a lot in common. Amanda had this obsession with peeling oranges to perfection. So I would buy them on purpose sometimes just so that she'd have them to pick. Like me, Amanda seemed to have a bit of anxiety, and for a long time, it seemed that we were on the same page. She believed in marriage before sex, as I did. And she was also a math major like I was, which is pretty hard. So it was cool that she was able to help me a lot with my work. Amanda wanted to be a mathematician, whilst I, on the other hand, picked math because I just thought I was good at it. Everything about her made me want to swoon. And I genuinely thought at that time that we were mounting towards something serious. I didn't know too much about her family except that they lived not too far from the campus and she didn't have a good relationship with them. I never pried because all in all, it seemed like a touchy subject. My parents were adoring, but I knew how others could be. A year in and Amanda and I were completely official. I mean, promise rings and all. I walked her to her classes and went to mine afterward, with heavy claps on my back from the other guys in my class who were impressed by the fact that I had an older girlfriend. I even made plans with my parents to bring her home during Christmas. After all the good things I said, they were beyond excited to meet her. And I believed vice versa. With a girlfriend came more expenses though, and my parents' monthly allowance wasn't going to cut it. I got a job off campus as an office assistant that was flexible, which allowed me to go to my classes work. The plan was to be able to buy her gifts at least monthly, and for her to just be able to lean on me when she needed to. The pay was decent and it proved to be convenient, not just for my relationship, but for myself and just personal development. I felt a lot more confident in myself knowing that I was able to sort of provide typical, traditional, role, BS. Nevertheless, even though it was flexible between the job and school, there was less time for Amanda. She didn't seem to mind. She was always so understanding, which was another thing I adored about her. She just seemed way too perfect. We came up with a plan to see each other often enough so that our lack of company wouldn't strain our relationship. After work, she'd either sneak into my dorm or I'd sneak into hers because although it was a co-ed school, mixing and mingling, especially after hours, was prohibited. Often, it was at my dorm because she always claimed that her roommates were messy. Thinking of it now though, sometimes, she'd slip up and say things that would make it seem like she didn't have any roommates, like often complaining about how quiet and lonely the dorm is and how she wished she had company or friends that stayed over. Either way, I didn't look into it at all because at the time, I trusted her and just thought she was randomly venting. There would also be times when I'd randomly show up just to surprise her and she'd freak out. Once again, complaining about the mess and her discomfort in having me around such filthy people. I yet again brushed it off, thinking it was just her anxiety. I knew how that felt. Fast forward to one day in particular, I noticed that her replies were a lot slower throughout the day, and normally we'd call during lunch to check in with each other, but she was unavailable. I didn't think too much of it. And when I finally got a hold of her, she told me how tired she was and how it had been a long, hectic day. In turn, she concluded that she wouldn't be coming over tonight. And when I got home, I should just get some rest and that she'd see me the next day. I took it upon myself to buy her some oranges before I got home, knowing how much she liked them. And some chocolate bars. I also grabbed her favorite vanilla, scented massage oil. I was going to show up to her dorm and let myself in, regardless of her messy roommates. She had a rough day and I'd be a horrible boyfriend if I just let her deal with it all by herself. I knocked on the door outside of her dorm. I thought to myself, even if she doesn't open it herself, I expect at least one of her roommates to show up. I could hear music playing through the metal door, so I figured that probably number one could hear me. I tested the doorknob to see if it was locked. And it wasn't, so hesitantly I just let myself in, and let me tell you, it was nothing as I had imagined. I thought there would be a large pile of dishes in the sink. Visible heavy dirt on the floor, maybe even undone. And dirty laundry on the couch, but the medium-sized room was spotless. Not only that, but it didn't seem like multiple people lived there just because of how it was solely decorated. The music seemed to be coming from a particular room, too, and although the area was fairly big, it wasn't big enough for more than a single room. Let me just explain this quickly. The college we went to wasn't a wealthy one per se, but we paid good money to be there. So the dorms were larger than your typical shoebox. Some dorms were singular and others were multiple bedrooms, 2 at most. Which is why I was so confused. Amanda said she had a dual dorm. Was I even in the right dorm? I contemplated turning around and running out of there. But it had to be her dorm. This was the only number that had hers on it. I followed the sound of the music despite my better judgment and the door. Her door was wide open. The room wasn't illuminated. However, I could see clear as day as Amanda hung over the edge of the bed with my older brother, Jack, hovering over her butt naked. They both felt my presence, and probably the sound of the bags hitting the floor had some part to play as their terrified eyes met mine. Amanda pushed Chase off of her, and Jay scrambled for his clothes. The entire time I was in the doorway trying to figure out what the hell I just witnessed, I was convinced for a second that I was even hallucinating until Amanda reached out to me wrapped in her blanket. Didn't even bother saying anything to any of them. I bolted out of there. For the first time in my life, I experienced heartbreak. I'd been in stupid little high school relationships before. Nothing that carried any weight. I even lost my virginity in the back of a school bus during a class trip. I felt awful afterwards, and that's when I swore to celibacy. I thought Amanda and I were on the same page, that we were working towards something long-term. Something we would take outside of this school. I was an idiot in case any of them would come. I locked my doors and sulked in the comfort of my room. It took me at least 2 days to actually get out of my room, just for the sake of my classes that I didn't want to fail the entire time. I'd been thinking about what would be the next steps that I would take in terms of our relationship or lack of one. I had a bunch of missed calls from both Amanda and Jace, including a few voicemails asking to explain. And Jace even went along the lines of I didn't need to overreact. I wondered how they would possibly explain this. Amanda had been lying all along, saying that she had roommates, saying that she was saving herself for marriage. Like me, and just feeding me all these lies. I had so many questions that angered me to even think of the answers. How long had they been doing this? Was it before we got together and he encouraged me to get with her? Was it after he saw how in love I was with her? And why did Amanda do it? Why would she get with me knowing that she was sleeping with my brother? I contemplated giving either of them a chance to explain. But for the life of me, I couldn't even begin to figure out what it is they would say. My rage consumed me every time I imagined them sitting together and lying to my face, or like Jace was trying to do, diminish the severity of the situation. I kept my head down for the next few days, but internally, there was a storm brewing. A plan was forming in my mind, and I was making no effort to stop it. A plan to ruin both their characters and even get them kicked out of school. I would have done it sooner. If it wasn't for the internal battle going on inside me, I wanted to do things rationally and not just because I was hurt. But the thing with rage is it consumes you, and sometimes even the most rational, morally obligated thinkers turn a blind eye to their own values. It all clicked when someone on campus got suspended for steroids hidden in their locker, and I began to wonder, what would they do if their students were dabbling in some more serious? Jace was known for being a pothead, but number one had dared snitch on him before because he was either their supplier or they respected his popularity. The school, however, had a strict ban on any type of drugs, which even included alcohol. If they found out that he had been smoking, much less selling, he'd be out of there for sure. But my plan didn't just stop at him. Amanda had to get her fair share as well. There was no way that I was just going to let her off the hook. No way. At that moment, it felt like she had physically taken something from me. I may have been being dramatic, but he was my first real girlfriend, and I saw us getting to a year as a huge accomplishment, especially for me. She helped me a lot school-wise and even just dealing with my anxiety. But I had gotten a job so that I could buy her things and take her out. And I was being the best, considerate boyfriend that I could be. Yet she slept with me with my brother, who changed women more than he changed boxes. And if the guys in my classroom were to ever find out, then I'd be the laughingstock of the month. She wasn't going to get away with it. And no amount of text messages or voicemails would make me change my mind. For the first part of my plan, I had to pretend to forgive Chase. I went over to his dorm and re-established the pathetic bros over hose code and made him believe that I was mad at Amanda, but not him. I also asked for a bit of weed for my nerves, and he happily gave it to me for free. The next part included Amanda. I returned one of her text messages, and almost immediately she called back. The worst part about all of it was how sincere she sounded. Jace was more or less unapologetic despite being dismissive about all of it, but Amanda, she sounded genuinely sorry for what she did. And in that moment of talking to her, I almost gave in. But after she told me that they had been sleeping together since before we'd met, and that he didn't really want anything more with her. I quickly realized that there was no going back for her. I was almost like a placeholder. She couldn't get one brother, so she went on to the next. I asked her if I could come over so that we could talk about it in person, and she instantly agreed. When I got there, I had to physically stop myself from giving in. The scent of her vanilla perfume, and the fact that she had candles lit, almost seemed like a trap. It wouldn't be fair of me if I didn't admit that we slept together that night. It was a moment of weakness. She said everything I wanted to hear, including the fact that I was really the one she wanted and that she knew for sure without a doubt. She initiated it, and I let it happen. I let it happen. I let it happen. I let it happen. Knowing that in the morning, I'd be gone, and the campus security would be waiting on her. I wanted her to feel that sweet sense of betrayal. She was a smart girl. She put two and two together and realized what I had done. I waited till she was asleep before slipping not just one baggie into her bag, but also in her drawer and school jacket. I made an anonymous call to campus security as well as the admissions office and named the two of them. It felt surreal watching from the sidelines of campus as security made their way to her dorm. But I secretly wished that I'd been there to see her face when they searched her room and when they got the bag. The only part one got to see was when they took her away. Amanda was practically dragged to the office resisting. She wasn't making that of a scene, however. She quietly tried to plead her case. Next would be my brother, but I wouldn't stick around to watch him. There was still anger brewing within me. Despite having gotten phase one of my revenge done, I wanted their worlds to crumble around them for what they'd done to me. They both got expelled, and my parents were absolutely furious with Chase. So much so that they shipped him back to our state. They forced him into rehab for 6 months. And when he got out, he didn't have a chance to breathe before they made him enlist in the army. I felt a little bad about it, mainly because he had an idea that I'd been the one to sell him out. He didn't say anything about it though. And in return, I kept the whole truth from my parents. Even when I went back home during the holidays without Amanda, who I'd been previously raving about, and they grew awfully suspicious. I told them that she had cheated on me with someone else and not my older brother. Not that I think it would make much of difference, but it saved him from a few more lectures and disappointed looks. In their eyes, I became the star boy, and that was nearly enough for me. As for Amanda, I can't say entirely what became of her after she was expelled. Surprisingly, she never reached out to me again, not even to call me a Dutch bag. In a twisted way, it made me feel better to think that she kinda understood why I did it, why I had to do it. What that was wishful thinking. Last I heard, she was trying to get into some other schools. Unsuccessfully. Expulsion for any reason could have you listed as a major red flag in the education community. And that's exactly what it did to her. I also heard that her parents were on the verge of disowning her if she didn't get herself together. Apparently, she came from a strict family. You've gotta love the gossip girls around the school. All in all, I think there's a lot I took away from the situations. A lot of emotions as well. I'd never considered myself to be a revengeful person. In fact, I was mainly on the softer side, and I think that's what makes or made people take advantage of me. Would I have done something like that again? Hell, yeah. All those old quotes about how revenge doesn't make you feel any better are straight lies. Up till this day, I think it would have bothered me more if I hadn't done anything about it, and Amanda and Chase could have still lived their happy lives after what they'd done to me. I still uphold my morals and my values nonetheless. Maybe not in regards to all the rated R things, but definitely just in my life. I graduated from college and even dated a few people in the process. Nothing serious. I still want to be good to people and honest, but no one's going to take advantage of me now without consequences. Not after I had the sweet taste of revenge. The biggest lesson from this story is, of course, to subscribe to my channel as well as like and comment your opinion under the video. Everything helps for the algorithm.